time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. Another week in the escape pod floating in space, and we have our co-host with us today, Blake. Just the two of us chatting about a few Star Wars subjects that we need to get caught up on. One being books that we've been talking about reviewing for way too long now, and only just finally getting around to it. That would be Star Wars The High Republic Fallen Star, the final capstone novel to the first phase of the High Republic Initiative. And we're going to be explaining that and talking about it, and it will be spoiler-centric, but for those of you who don't plan to read it, it's going to be fine. It might even be useful to hear about what's going on in the High Republic, thanks to a certain new video game that just came out, which is Jedi Survivor, which we're also going to talk about spoiler-free Jedi Survivor initial thoughts and the new Orbitkey Retro Collection. So, let's get into it.
Another happy landing.
That, everybody, is the sound of the Starlight Beacon Star Wars Lo-Fi that you can find on Star Wars YouTube channel. And welcome back, sir.
Hello there. Yes, good to be back as always. Another fun, exciting experience here. Talk about Star Wars here while we're trapped, floating through space in the escape pod, waiting to be saved.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, this music, honestly, it's just kind of nice ambiance that we could actually, coast with for a little while here. But
I may fall asleep.
Yeah,
it's pretty cozy.
There is at this moment not a lot of media other than readable material that exists for the High Republic. That includes music, it includes games, and for those people who don't know really what the High Republic is, you can look at a Star Wars timeline which kind of updates, more recently they updated it, Star Wars Celebration, we were talking about that, a week or two ago, but yeah, the High Republic is a couple hundred years before the prequel trilogy, and for the last couple years...
100, or is it?
It's a couple hundred, yeah. It's like, it's between 100 and 500 years, depending on which phase of the High Republic we're talking about. And that's part of the reason that plays into why it's okay that we're late getting on the bandwagon for reviewing this book.
Yeah, that's why.
Because the first phase is, I think it's around 200 to 300 years before the Phantom Menace. And phase 2 of the High Republic is a prequel phase to phase 1. So that phase 2, weirdly enough, is actually further back. It's at like the 500-year mark, moving upwards. And then phase 3, which has been announced, it'll start as of this year in fall. That phase is going to be the last phase in the High Republic and take us all the way up to the Disney Plus Acolyte show, which is about 100 years before the Phantom Menace, or 50 to 100 years before that.
So let me get this straight. We're going to review the book, which is the ending of the first phase after the second phase has already been completed and they're starting the third phase.
Yeah. But I mean, it's okay that we're
really good at keeping up with this Star Wars content.
I know there's so much, right? It's okay that we're late getting onto this bandwagon because, of course, this is the last. Chronologically, it is the last book of Phase 1, which leads directly into Phase 3. And even though we're kind of we haven't reviewed or read a single book of Phase 2 yet. Neither of us have. And I think it's kind of funny that somehow we've just been too busy, right? But that's okay because it's all before this story happens. So at the moment, this book is still very relevant because no one knows what comes next. So this is all good. It's all good. It's all good, everybody.
Yeah, this is all planned out.
All planned out. Very well.
Feel free to tweet at us if you disagree.
Yeah. So the book we're talking about today for a section of our podcast is Star Wars The High Republic, The Fallen Star. It's written by Claudia Gray, and it was released in January last year. That's 2022. On the 4th by the Del Rey publisher, which is the staple Star Wars novels that kind of build the main pillars of, I would say, the canon lore in a way. You know, a lot of the junior novels don't tend to have as much impact, but yeah, these canon, like these Del Rey Star Wars novels tend to be the very like structural kind of elements that they've been using to kind of drive a lot of the canon. You know,
You always wondered if Disney or Lucasfilm picked this company because it has the name Rey in it.
Yeah, I wonder, or maybe that's why they got the name, because Del Rey's been a publisher for Star Wars for years.
Yeah.
How original.
Rey, these are your first books.
Rey, this is your first page. All right, so the publisher summary for this guy. Let's take a look at what this book is about. We can even just quickly recap for people what happened kind of roughly before this, and
I could use a refresher with that.
In a nutshell, yeah, and just kind of where we think the story's going. Just for a warning for everybody, this is a spoiler-centric review. If you plan on reading The High Republic: The Fallen Star and you don't want to be spoiled, do not listen to this section. Maybe jump forward ahead when we're talking about Jedi Survivor. That's a spoiler-free review. And we're also going to be plugging Orbitkey in a moment as well, which is really cool. You should definitely check that out. All right, publisher summary. In this gripping sequel to Star Wars: The Rising Storm, the light of the Jedi faces its darkest hour. Time and again, the vicious raiders known as the Nihil have sought to bring the golden age of the High Republic to a fiery end. Time and again, the High Republic has emerged battered and weary, but victorious thanks to the Jedi Protectors, and there is no monument to their cause grander than the Starlight Beacon. Hanging like a jewel in the outer rim, the beacon embodies the High Republic at the apex of its aspirations, a hub of culture and knowledge, a bright torch against the darkness of the unknown, and an extended hand of welcome to the furthest reaches of the galaxy. As survivors and refugees flee the Nile's attacks, the beacon and its crew stand ready to shelter and heal. The grateful knights and Padawans of the Jedi Order stationed there finally have a chance to recover from the pain of their injuries and the grief of their losses. But the storm that they had thought had passed still rages. They're simply caught in its eye. Marchion Ro, the true mastermind of the Nihil, is preparing his most daring attack yet, one designed to snuff out the light of the Jedi, which is a bit of a play on the first novel in this phase 1, which is The Light of the Jedi. So it's very smartly written there. I got to say this, just like kind of up front. Initial thoughts on this book. I liked it. It wasn't the best Star Wars book I've ever read, but I liked it. Okay. And I think that's all you just up front, just a spoiler-free way of just kind of initial thoughts. When I finished it, was like, it was good. It wasn't as good as Light of the Jedi, but it was good. I'm just curious, like in a nutshell, just kind of like how did you feel when you finished it?
Well, I remember the one before this, in between Light of the Jedi and this novel, which was the name of that one. They all sound the same to me. It's a hard time remembering them.
Right.
What was the name of it? The second book?
Second book was the Rising Storm.
Rising Storm.
Yeah.
Well, that one was so terrible that I had a very low bar for this book. And so I enjoyed it quite a lot. And this book read to me almost like a disaster novel.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say disaster movie because I feel like I've seen more movies than books in that category. But I enjoyed it quite a lot. I remember actually really getting into this novel, whereas the previous one, it was a struggle for me to
it was.
into it.
I totally agree.
And something that is worth noting here is that Josh read the book, whereas I listened to the audiobook. Yeah,
so we got two perspectives on this. We got the audio, the performance level. If you're into audiobooks, Blake has done the audiobook, and I have read the novel. And of course, with that, I've got highlighted annotations and such through the ebook that we'll be bringing up through this review as well. So, it's kind of nice that we do that way because, each of us get a different perspective on the story as it's kind of unraveling in front of us.
And we learned things of what I guess you could say is the official pronunciation of words like Marchion and not Marchion.
Yeah, you can correct me on stuff like that. Marchion Row. There we go. Yeah.
Though that being said, it's never always accurate because the original audiobooks for the Thrawn trilogy, they pronounced Coruscant Coruscant. That's before the prequels.
Right. Yeah. That is true. That is a good point. It's actually kind of mind blowing that Coruscant is mentioned in any Star Wars book at all before the prequels came out. That is cool.
Yeah. I guess they would have just got that idea directly from George because he was probably planning the prequels around.
Well, he's writing it since like 91 or 92, right?
Right?
Like for Phantom Menace. So I guess it would have been.
He already had an established idea then.
Yeah. But that is cool though. I always forget that.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, let's breeze through this opening crawl because this kind of helps us set up the story. That was the publisher's summary. So here's the opening crawl. Every Star Wars book ever, if you've read a Star Wars book at all, the book, much like a lot of the films, always have a bit of a little blurb as to like what came before, so that we can kind of go in understanding like where the story's picking up. So like you mentioned, the last book, which we weren't really a huge fan of, was called The Rising Storm. And that was the second book in this trilogy of the main staple novels. Every single phase of the High Republic has been broken out into roughly six or maybe 8 books each. And each level of reading audience has been targeted with 3 novels. So the main Del Rey books have been targeting like older kids / adults. And those are the 3. They're always, the Del Rey ones are always like the main novels of the phase. So phase 1 was the Light of the Jedi, which kicks things off. Then we had the Rising Storm, and then we had this novel, which was The Fallen Star. First one was by Charles Soule, most notable for a lot of his work in the Darth Vader comic books, and those ones are fabulous, by the way. The Rising Storm was done by Cavan Scott, who has also done a few other stories in Star Wars, and I can look it up because I can't exactly remember exactly what he's done. He's done The Adventures in Wild Space. He's done a few of the Star Wars comic books here and there. Let's see, what's his
He's
most
done something of notability because I don't remember his name coming up.
He's done a lot of the High Republic comic book stuff. And that's I can't think that I don't think he's done anything else other than High Republic. Okay. Believe it or not.
Maybe I'm misremembering.
Yeah. Actually, sorry. He did the book that we liked a lot, which was Dooku Jedi Lost.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I think he did that one. So there you go. Okay, so and then this third novel is written by Claudia Gray. Fallen Star.
Should have stuck to a sequel instead and did Dooku Jedi Found. Jedi
Found, yeah. The junior novels for Phase 1 consist of a few of them. There was young adult novels, and then there was junior novels. So all of these books kind of like they all seemed like, looking back at Phase 1, because now this is like the end of the line. Mm-hmm. Would you say it's worthwhile for people to read the main staple books plus all the young adult and the junior novels, or?
I don't know about the junior novels, but I actually thought the young adult, the second one down. Yeah, young adult.
The young adult ones. Those ones were good.
Yeah, I thought they were questionably better than the main line.
I weirdly found that as well, just in general, right?
Yeah, because they were going for more of an eerie kind of like spookiness to them, I thought, which was pretty cool. They could almost write a little bit like a horror novel. If anyone's listened to our reviews of that, you'll know that our complaints were they didn't lean enough into that, as in the new villain they introduced, the plant creatures was their name.
Yeah, the Drengir.
Drengir, yeah. I said Drengar, like the Dengar version. They led us to believe they're going to be this like evil, like almost like a force creature where they're just driven to like eat and consume like a almost like a classic horror monster. Yeah. And instead they made them this sentient species that I don't know. It became really weird. I wish they just didn't make them sentient.
I
Honestly.
wish that they just didn't talk.
Exactly.
I thought
that was the main
weird.
thing.
Yeah, that was weird. That was really weird. So yeah, I mean, some of the novels are worthwhile reading than others. The three staple adult novels, just went over those. The young adult novels are like a tier down for reading level, but again, quick to get through, and also the stories were really good. We had Into the Dark, written by Claudia Gray, Out of the Shadows, written by Justina Ireland, and Midnight Horizon by Daniel Jose Older. I must admit, we've only read Into the Dark and not either of the other two. The middle grade novels, which are considered junior, there was A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland, Race to Crash Point Tower, which was Daniel Jose Older, and Mission to a Disaster, which was by Justina Ireland. And I have read Race to Crash Point Tower and A Test of Courage.
I think I read the same too.
Yeah.
We talked about.
So I feel like there's only 3 books total between young and middle grade that we just haven't gotten to from phase 1.
I think what happened was we were reading the books and then The Mandalorian came out.
Yeah.
We just never went back to it.
Yeah, no, that's true. There's been so much Disney Plus stuff that, like last year we had, I mean, everything from Book of Boba, Kenobi, Andor. Like, there was so much, Bad Batch. Like, we've had so much stuff to talk about that we just didn't have enough time to read all this. And we had Shadows of the Sith, which we reviewed last year as well.
That's true. Yep.
So.
Then we also did, I think we finally talked about Jedi Fallen Order as well.
That was the year before, but I'm trying to think. Like, there was
So
definitely
much
another.
Star Wars.
There was. Yeah, anyway, it's been a lot. But yeah, that's pretty much like the main thing. They do have young reader books, like infant kind of level, big picture books. Those are just adapted stories from stories in the other novels that they kind of picturize and make for young kids. But overall, the big staple of each phase is usually made in 3 reading tiers, each of a total of 3 books, which make a total of 9 books per phase typically. And then along that, we also have the underlying Marvel comic series, which has been an ongoing thing with the High Republic Marvel comic series. There's, I don't know how many issues is it per phase, but it's been a couple volumes so far per phase, maybe like 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. And then there's sub to that, there is like some mini short, like kind of either one-shot comics or like a limited run series of 4 issues or 3 issues or whatever during the High Republic as well, which kind of have some short stories. There was also that audiobook called Tempest Runner, and we did talk about that one as well. That was like I
recognize that name.
Yeah. Each phase tends to have maybe one audiobook that they've done. I don't think there was one for phase 2, but there was like, this was written as an audiobook. It was like an audio drama. And it was about Lorna D, one of the Nihil people. And that really I didn't like that one at all that much. It wasn't very good. But yeah, I gotta say, like, as far as like the main staple stories goes, like, you really only need to read the Del Rey novels, and the young adult stuff, it's like
Supplementary.
It's supplementary, not super essential, but there are characters in the young adult ones that show up in the main adult novels a lot. Like, they become main characters. So, I think my recommendation would be hit the young adult novels and the Del Rey novels for sure, and then just avoid the middle grade and lower.
And if you can't even do that, just do the Del Rey, because you'll get kind of like the broad stroke story of what's happening.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so how that works, that's all explained now. Let's hit the plot summary. The tragic events of the Republic Fair have galvanized the galaxy. The Jedi and the Republic have gone onto the offensive to stop the marauding Nihil. With these vicious raiders all but defeated, Master Avar Kriss has her sights set on Lorna D, the supposed Eye of the Nile, and has undertaken a mission to capture her once and for all. But unbeknownst to the Jedi, the true leader of the Nihil, the insidious Marchion Ro, is about to land an attack on the Jedi and the Republic on a scale that hasn't been seen in centuries. If he succeeds, the Nihil will be triumphant, and the light of the Jedi will go dark. Only the brave Jedi Knights of Starlight Beacon stand in his way, but even as they may not be enough against Ro and the ancient enemy that's about to be unleashed. Okay, so Starlight Beacon is a big space station that the Republic has basically built to be kind of like a hub in the Outer Rim, which they can use as a way to do like outreach, and I guess it's also a communications tower to expand like the HoloNet and everything. What else would you describe it to be? Like just tons of hangars. It's got a medical bay.
Yeah, you can kind of, I guess, think of it as maybe during like Victorian age, they'll send like a ship of everyone out to like explore the new world,
Right?
And, like reach out to the new locals, and then they kind of, it'd be like, I guess what you'd think of as like their armada itself. Like they kind of have their own hub. That everything, I guess that's what you call it, was a hub. Everything kind of centered out of there, right? And then, but the benefit being in space and Star Wars, you can move around so much easier.
Yeah, because it's got engines on it. Yeah. Yeah. So we actually had a guest on the podcast who designed the model for the Starlight Beacon. His name was Jason, and you can find that episode, I think, within the last couple of months. I think we had him on
quite recently.
Yeah. So he was really cool. It was fascinating talking to him. Of course, he kind of spoiled the story as to what we're talking about today, which is the fact that they broke his space station.
Hit the button.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It works doubly well because the ship is tearing in half as we play.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's kind of the general story. I really, I couldn't connect on it on the same way that other people could, but I felt that this event was supposed to be the Star Wars version of 9/11. See, that to me really kind of struck hard. And I was really quite young when that all went down, and it's a very like big event that kind of transformed the world in some ways, and I think like Star Wars is always rooted in reality to a certain extent, right? There's real world events that have inspired what goes on in a galaxy far, far away. And to me, this just kind of had 9/11 written all over it.
Yeah, I didn't actually make that correlation because it was in space and Star Wars. I was almost thinking more like, you ever watched the movie Armageddon with like the asteroid heading towards Earth? But,
yeah.
Because there's kind of both sides to that.
Yeah.
In this story, where like the station is going to crash into like a capital city of this planet, while simultaneously it itself is breaking apart and exploding. But with the Nihil being what are essentially terrorists in Star Wars, that actually I can see that connection.
Yeah. They and because the station when they basically sneak aboard the station, they plant a bomb, and these people go aboard this mission knowing that these Nihil warriors they go about this mission knowing that they're not going to come back. Like they plan on destroying the station, everybody aboard with it, including themselves. And to that point, they make within their efforts, they try to make it so no one else can escape. Exactly. Yeah.
They know themselves are not going to escape either, so they're not worried about trying to leave the opening for themselves. Yeah,
they sabotage the station in such a critical way that it damages escape pods, it damages electrical systems. It creates a block-in of many areas of the ship. The ray shielded hangar bays, like that power goes down. So of course the giant blast doors seal, and it becomes a magnetically sealed room. So they can't even blast their way out technically speaking with low firepower, that is. So it becomes an issue because of course now they're floating dead in space. There's massive critical damage to the ship. And then, of course, halfway through the book, we find out that now, because of the damage, the station is now splitting in two. And now there's two sections of this giant kind of space station that are being slowly drifting towards the planet that it's orbiting into its gravity field. And the inevitable risk of that is that these two halves, or these two inverted-looking tower things, are about to plummet into a city full of people and kill a ton of people. And that's kind of where I thought, like, this is very 9/11 to me. Like, it's just kind of like had, that chaos just written all over it. And of course the leader of the planet below them, she newly, I guess, a new addition to the Republic, clears the city, evacuates the city to try and get as many people to safety as possible in a just in case scenario. But it was a lot of people kind of just acting on the faith that they have that the Jedi can like fix this and like kind of save as many people as possible.
And even they themselves don't really know.
Yeah,
They're trying to figure out what happened, and everyone's all like separated across the ship and all isolated.
yeah, exactly.
So they're a lot of them themselves are losing confidence in being able to stop it.
Totally, yeah. And every life that they try and save, like it's as this thing is all going down, they're also hit with another danger, which is that the Nihil, not only have they smuggled a bomb on board and successfully critically damaged the station, but they've also smuggled some creatures on board the ship as well. And we'll talk about that as well. But two of which are Rathtars, and in another containment box that they kind of smuggle aboard, they also have it's listed as Rathtars, but they're not Rathtars. They're actually something far more ancient and deadly, and apparently can be very disruptive to the Force itself and affect the Jedi in this very odd way. And it's
I've got some comments on that.
we'll talk about that, because of course one of the Jedi at the very end of I think it was The Rising Storm, the second book in the trilogy, that's when we first kind of had the reveal of these creatures. And I think it was Bell's former master. He
turned stone.
Yeah, they basically, the result of an encounter with this creature turns a Jedi to ash, in a very in like a statue ash, or like a husk,
like a Medusa sort
yeah,
of effect.
Medusa, totally. Yeah, they describe it as like a husk, because like if you touch it, it just disintegrates, and they're just ash.
So
right?
it's Medusa mixed together with the snap.
I don't know what the snap is, but
Well, the snap from like Marvel Endgame.
yes, 100%. Yeah, Thanos' snap. Yeah, that is the perfect way to describe it. Yeah. We can maybe start kind of digging into these like individual things at this point that we can point out from the story.
That actually reminded me when they first revealed that in the last novel. All I could think of was the Marvel snap. I'm like, wow, they just ripped that off.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like you might be right, because like this all happens, is written afterwards, right?
Yeah.
There's still no name for these creatures, as far as I know, and these are creatures that have no effect on the non-Force sensitive. It's only Force sensitives that can be affected by these things. I picture it as the closest depiction that we got, which was from a Jedi's perspective, was that it was like this shadowy kind of distortion of a cloud or something like that was moving towards them. Of course, that's probably their blindness in the Force, that they can't see what it is. I just imagined it being some sort of like dog-looking creature from Pandora.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of right.
Kind of like a creepy looking, like on all fours kind of thing, sleuthy and sneaking up on people. And but every time it gets near a Jedi, they start to feel like basically like the wrath of God, like fear in their hearts, like just like they start to have like nightmarish visions.
Is it from the lack of the Force?
Yeah, they all of a sudden they can't quite touch the Force the same way they could. Like it's like the field is been disturbed in a way that they can't quite connect to it.
Okay. Are we getting into this now? Because
yeah, we can. Let's get into it. Yeah.
Okay, because here's my complaint. So in the Thrawn trilogy, there were these lizards.
Yeah.
And they created a anti-Force bubble.
Yeah.
So Force sensitives couldn't detect any Force use within them. They kind of blocked the Force.
Yeah, that's why the EU version of Thrawn kept these lizards around him all the time.
That's right. Yeah. So that any Force users couldn't sense what he was planning and trying to foresee the future and use it against him.
Right.
And one of the things that I believe Dave Filoni specifically called out, because he said, Thrawn trilogy, like there's all these great story points, but there's also weird stuff like the lizards we could do without.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've just gone full circle into doing the exact same thing again.
Yeah, I feel you 100%. Like I don't like the idea of these creatures. Mm-hmm. And whether they're ancient or not, clearly they don't exist later in the timeline, so maybe there's just not that many. But
maybe it'll be like, like Europe used to have like bears and cougars and stuff, and they just went and exterminated all of them.
Right.
Just over like generations, right? So
Yeah.
the Jedi are like, these are bad, so they just go and like
Kill them
drive
all.
them to extinction.
Yeah, I was surprised though how many Jedi they killed in this story. Not just from the space station going down, which I think only one of the main 3 characters of this phase had like died. He sacrificed himself to steer the station into like the ocean so it avoided the big city.
Spoilers.
But yeah, spoiler again. This is a spoiler thing. But there was like, what was it, like four Jedi that we've come to know within the first phase have been killed off by this creature, or these. I think there was more than one. I think they suggested that there was a total of 7 individuals that were aboard Starlight on behalf of Marchion Ro. 3 of them were the Nile that were supposed to set off the bomb. 2 of them were the Rathtars, and then there was another 2 which were these unlabeled force disturbance creatures that have killed more Jedi than I can count in a single novel. I just don't really like them.
I was so surprised that they were willing to kill that many named characters
Yeah,
that we've been following for 3 books now.
definitely. The Rathtars got one too. They got Bura Yaga, the Wookiee Jedi.
Oh, I have a audio clip from that scene.
Yeah, actually, you want to play that? You want
Sure, yeah.
to play that?
Start with that
Yeah,
one.
Bura Yaga is a different Wookiee character from the one that we've been hinted at that's going to show up in the Acolyte, but still, it's like, man, like the heart that they must have, just like to kill a Wookiee Jedi is like, seriously,
lot.
that must have
Yeah.
been painful to do,
And the reason why I actually saved this scene is because I wanted to talk about something that happens in here. So
Go for it.
Instead, he dashed to the service ladder on the side, normally hidden within a maintenance shaft. It had been exposed in the newly cavernous space of the cargo bay when they'd collapsed the walls. He climbed as quickly as he could, desperate to reach Buryaga before more harm was done. Buryaga, however, wasn't done defending himself. He extended his claws to the fullest, a sight Elzar had never seen before, and a fearsome one, to slash at the Rathtar that held him. It screeched in pain and let go. For one instant, Elzar smiled. Buryaga would use the force to catch himself. Elzar would jump down to him, and maybe the Rathtars had learned their lesson. They hadn't. The other Rathtar bolted down the wall to grab Buryaga again. This time, its tentacle wrapped around his neck, tightly enough to suffocate anyone to death, even a Wookiee. Buryaga clawed at the tentacle again, but this Rathtar was made of sterner stuff than the last. It only yowled in anticipation as it brought the Wookiee closer to its wide, hungry mouth. The docking bay was all but empty.
they transition away and they transition back. Yeah. So that's the scene of the Rathtar fighting. I think we come back and they finish the fight and Buryaga dies, if I remember.
He gets
correctly.
carried away and he's not seen dead, but like these Rathars basically had him by every limb and the neck and everything, and they kind of disappeared, and they didn't see him
and then
escape.
And then it crashes.
Yeah, and then the space station crashes. They basically suggest that there's no possibility that he could have survived. And when the space station does crash, there was a Jedi, Elzar Man, who survives the event. He senses that there were more than that one Jedi who sacrificed himself. There were a few other individuals aboard the space station that perished with the space station because he feels it in the Force. So it is very likely that he died as well. So the Rathars got one. These other creatures got like 3 or 4. And then the station collapsing as well took Loden Greatstorm along with him. So there was a lot of Jedi deaths in this book.
Yeah, like I said, I was very surprised how many they killed off. To me, this
Yeah.
was almost like a Red Wedding moment in Game of Thrones.
I got a few little Easter eggs.
Before we change topics.
Oh, sure.
The reason why I saved that clip is because he uses his claws.
Oh yeah. It was pointed out in the story that it's like not very many times has this Wookiee Jedi used his actual claws to like get himself out of a situation. I feel like we never seen even Chewbacca use his claws.
That's because culturally, and this might be EU now, but culturally with Wookiees, their claws are supposed to be tools. They're for climbing and like building, and you're not supposed to use them for combat. And if you use them for fighting, you're what's considered a mad claw, and you're thrown out of Wookiee society.
Right. So that's what happened to like Black Chrysanthemum or something.
Yeah,
or
exactly. And there's another Wookiee who's famous for that in the KOTOR 2 game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how. It's nice that they kind of had a little nod to the head.
It's KOTOR 1, and it's the guy he found out his brother, the Wookiee, his brother was selling their own people into slavery and attacked him with his claws, and then he got thrown out. That's what happened.
Gotcha. Yeah, I did like that. It's like a nod of the head, right? It's like a nod of the head. It's not like a full like recanonizing that this is a thing, but like I liked that they did put that in. It's like, oh, like this is like he's using his claws. Like I've never seen that before. So then not many people have.
That's true.
Yeah.
I guess then under that context, it makes sense that he wouldn't know the cultural connotation to that from
Right.
the Wookiee perspective.
Right. That's yeah.
So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe this is a gateway into recanonizing it as opposed to eliminating it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I could see that for sure. There's a few Easter eggs here which I kind of want to bring up. One character in the book, which we've come to know over the course of Phase 1, has been a rock character named Geode, and I think you also have an audio clip about this rock. We can share that as well.
There's two, actually.
Geode. They write this character in a very interesting way because he's got no limbs. He's basically, if you imagine, a boulder.
He's a pet rock. That's the basic.
He's a pet rock. Yeah, and it's unclear as to how he moves around. He kind of just either he slides around or he just kind of shows up.
Mm-hmm. He's very Batman. In the novel series.
It's very
he's there, and all of a sudden he's gone.
Yeah, it's very elusive as to how he gets around. He doesn't talk. You know, and all we know about his species is that they can magnetically seal their body.
As of this book,
they can do that.
That's one of my clips.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let's hear the first one, and we can talk about that. The weirdness of that.
Yeah, I was caught very off guard, and I was like, I'm not sure about this.
Ricocheted around at tremendous speed, bouncing off walls and floors until they might as well have been caught in a firefight. The Wookiee bellowed in protest, and the curse words of 36 worlds were shouted and screamed. Beneath the Adrian's ship, Affy and Pika shared a look. They both knew that bolt wasn't going to stop until it hit something besides a wall, which meant either a ship was going to get damaged or somebody was about to get killed. The bolt zapped by them, and at the instant of that strange sizzling sound, the bolt stopped. Like everyone else, Affy looked up to see Geode standing there, burn mark in his midsection, still smoking, completely undaunted. He'd thrown himself in front of the blaster fire and taken the hit. As she watched, he sloughed off the scorched dust and gravel and let it crumble to the floor. "No time for pain," Joss Adrian said admiringly. "I had the wrong idea about you, man." Geode modestly said nothing, even as
He modestly said nothing.
That's right.
It's funny how they write the character because it always makes it seem like he could do something, but he doesn't because he's a rock, right?
Yeah, they do that all the time.
All the time, yeah. What were your thoughts on like this character? Because we've read about Geo now in about two or three books. Like any further thoughts on just a character that's made of a boulder?
How would they, my first question and thoughts were, how are they going to do this in FFG for the Star Wars game?
I don't really know.
And I know that AJ would love to play as a rock that never has to contribute talking, commerce, any to plans. He's just a rock, and he can become invincible by making himself magnetically sealed.
Sounds like a character you'd love to play.
Those are my first thoughts. But then, story-wise, I've had a back and forth with this character because it's absurd. That's the whole point of the character, right? He's there for comedic effect.
Yeah, the laughs. Yeah.
But that being said, it's been done in a way that I think has been kind of fun and a little clever. Like he's always kind of the butt of the joke.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in the first novel I was worried it would kind of get old, but I don't know, they've kept it fresh enough, I guess, that I have actually enjoyed it so far. Would I want to watch a series around this character? Probably not.
Right.
Would I want a dedicated novel or comic? Probably not. But as far as like this sidekick character that is just kind of there once in a while, I think it's fine. I know when this series first launched, a lot of people were really upset by this, like pointing at the lack of creativity, whatever, with this character. And I could see, without reading the novels, jumping to that conclusion. And I was skeptical when I found out about it before reading the books. But I thought they've done a really good job with this character, to be honest.
There's a funny little clip that you got to share.
This is an example of the jokes that they often use with Geode.
Yeah.
Here, just pulling it up.
Began to applaud.
Oops,
Pickett.
that's not it. Okay, here we go.
She began. What's the problem? Joss let out a long sigh. Listen, I know there's nothing for me to worry about. Not really. But that doesn't mean I appreciate people flirting with my wife in front of my very eyes. Oh, Leox isn't flirting, Affy said. He winds up hugging everybody sooner or later. Leox Jossie isn't the problem, Joss huffed. It's that damn rock. Affy angled her body around the side of Adrian's ship to see the vessel. Its hatch was open, geode at the top of the ramp, upon which sat Pika Adrian, her curly hair bouncing as she laughed. Affy hurriedly said, Geode's a Vintian. It's not like there's anything he could do with a human, even if he wanted to, which he doesn't. He dates in species only, which for most people I think is kind of narrow-minded. But you have to admit, for Vintians, it's kind of unavoidable. Joss looked over her shoulder and sighed. I guess you're right. Affy smiled at him, relieved to have restored his mood, while inwardly thinking, oh, great. Geode's on the prowl again.
It's kind of funny that they would throw a joke like that in there, that like someone's such a terrible spouse that they'd rather flirt with a rock. It's like, dang, I mean, that's tough news.
Right? And I feel like that's an example of like how Geode is used kind of cleverly. It's like you would never expect you'd never expect a rock to be like flirting with someone and like,
because he doesn't talk, he doesn't say anything.
That's a rock,
right?
Right? And the fact that he's like stealing someone's wife, and that his crew member considers him like a ladies' man, but he's a rock. Yeah,
it's like up until the point that we learn it's a little crab. Picture that whole Johnny Depp moment when he's like going crazy thinking that these rocks are like moving, and like he just kind of turns around, they're there in the third Pirates movie. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like that. It kind of reminds me of like just how Geo is perceived by other people, because they realize like, oh, that's like a creature, like that's some sort of alien living organism, rather than like just a rock, right? So yeah, it's kind of funny. All right, Elzar could not make himself reject his feelings about Avar, but he couldn't let those feelings turn poisonous. This is a little snippet I took out of the book. Jedi on feelings. This book was a very big one for Jedi and feelings and attachments, and like the fact that it's a thing apparently that Jedi can have intimacy, but not have the feelings that all go along with it. What are your thoughts on this? Because I always thought it was really weird that they started to introduce this aspect to
try to add friends with benefits.
Yeah. It's like, okay, like that just never works. Like I've seen enough rom-coms to know that doesn't work, right? And this book is clearly pointing that out because he's got feelings for Avar.
Well, I think it's in the last novel, maybe in the first novel they talk about this. There's a very small sect of Jedi that actually do this. Whereas the vast majority just don't have like physical intimacy with anyone.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this briefly before, where we brought up, say, Obi-Wan, and how if he was going to do that, he would have had to leave the Order. So yeah, I guess there must be a change.
There must be
somewhere between where we are now in the timeline and where we are at the time of the prequels.
Yeah.
or else this wouldn't have been an issue.
It's possible. Yeah, it's definitely possible. They could always kind of close that off as like a law and confirm what we think about the Jedi during the prequels. Like they're like space monks, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's at least that's the way that I always looked at them. Is they're like space monks that don't have they avoid anything to do with the
They're married to the
temptation
craft.
of,
Yeah.
like anything that would like potentially like lure them towards that kind of attachment lifestyle. Like I always just thought that this was kind of strange.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But as you're pointing out, they really push the emphasis that this is Elzar's like one of his like
Struggles,
weaknesses,
right?
and it has caused him in this novel as well, which we'll get into, caused him to be really close to the dark side and even give into it a few times.
Yeah.
And we're kind of retreading the same storyline that we saw with Anakin in regards to this.
Yeah, for sure. There was a Jedi which I just thought was the stupidest named Jedi ever, and I had to pick it out. His name is Frosian Jedi Norin Bakarakakana. And I just thought that was the most unoriginal, stupid name for a Jedi of any kind in any regards amongst all of Star Wars. Like, who comes up with a name like this?
Okay, this is one of those times where reading the novels stands out way more than listening.
Like,
Didn't even
look at the spelling. Like, try and say that.
Okay,
Look at the spelling of that thing.
trying to find it here. Oh, there it is. A Frosian Jedi Noran Bakarakana. That's all one word. And I think there's 10 letters.
Yeah. It's a lot. It was a mouthful. Like
gosh.
thinking about it in my head, I was always like, anytime I saw that name show up, my brain would just stop reading, and I would have to read it like 4 times over to try and.
That's part of the issue, though, is like when you introduce a character with a name like that, the reader you're taken out, right, of the story, and eventually just start to ignore the character name. Like, you don't even bother to pronounce it, just like that guy.
Norin Bakarakana. Yeah, it's like, and I think back to the reason why JJ named all these like single syllable names: Rey, Finn, Poe, Maz.
Memorable.
Leia,
never remember Nora
Luke,
Barakakana.
Han. Right? Like, I mean, like, it's only the prequels that gave us some longer, like, Yarrow Poof. And, like...
But even then, it's usually, like...
Rancid of something or another. Like... is it Rasness or Rancid? I don't know. It's, like, something like that. Yaddle.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Qui-Gon Jinn. Right? It's only, like...
It's very often a 2-syllable name and a 1-syllable name. And they switch back and forth between...
Yeah.
Luke... Well, I guess Luke Skywalker's 3, right? Yeah, but that's an
You
exception
get
to
the
the
point.
rule. Darth Vader.
Yeah, Maul, Vader, Dooku. Like, they're all easy names to remember. Like, who's going to remember Norin Bakarakana?
That's Master Nor Baratakana to you.
Make sure you score that action figure.
Gosh, this is going to be in the trivia now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%.
Oh, gosh.
Okay,
What is the name of the Jedi with the longest name?
we had an Easter egg for a device that recently showed up in Andor. It's called an astrometrical sextant. And if, a sextant is traditionally something used for navigational purposes, like, on the open seas, right? It's for tracking stars and navigating based on astral navigation, but like a completely manual way of doing it, right? And the prop used in Andor is primarily recognized as a really old camera, I think, right? It's like something like that. But anyway, it shows up in this book as an astrometrical device, which one of the characters uses to, before the information is revealed to them that the station is, in fact, approaching the gravity field of this planet, because the Jedi at first don't want to freak everybody out, so they don't tell anybody. And one of these characters, I think it's Leo or something like that, they use one of these things and figure it out for themselves. They're like, oh, this station is moving. Like, we're drifting, and we're about to hit the gravity zone. Like, this is bad. So I just thought it was worth noting that a device like this is still considered a very ancient and old device, even though this is a couple hundred years before Andor. So the prop that we see in Andor that's brought up, it is really old. Like we're probably talking 1,000 years or more.
Is it this same device?
No, well, I think it
similar?
is. Yeah, I think it's the same, if not a very similar type of device. The idea of navigating with a manual device that tracks that can, measure stars and everything like that. Like nobody does that.
Right.
Anymore.
It's a like specialty thing. Like if nowadays
Yeah.
you would just use GPS, you wouldn't see someone trying to map based on stars.
Yeah, exactly. In the same way that nobody uses a paper map in their car anymore. That's kind of, it's kind of like that. But even more
Even crazier.
Yeah, like who the heck walks around with like a portable
'Cause at
sundial in
least,
their
like,
pocket, right?
At least with the map, you can kind of like figure it out, like how it works and what's going
Yeah.
on.
Like maps and star charts. Yeah, yeah.
But if you're given a mechanical device to base navigation on stars, I think it'd be very difficult.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think they say that in Andor, if I'm not mistaken.
Like if you just look up a picture of a sextant, it's got a weird name. I'm gonna, let's put that out there. Elephant in the room. But yeah, if you look up a picture of a sextant, like it's very typical, like probably used in the 1700s to navigate the seas, right? Like just navigate around. Explorers would have used these, and I don't know how old the device really is, but there is a Wikipedia page on the matter. And it's called a hyperspace sextant, and I'm gonna stop saying that word, but but like it's I think like on this page it doesn't reference that it's showing up in Andor, and in the book it's actually called something else. The hyperspace isn't in the words, actually astrometrical. So I think the idea though is like it's a similar device that's of the same caliber of what it does, but it's just a different model maybe.
Do you think it's coincidence, or do you think it's a story group?
I think it was
suggestion?
I think it was very intentional that it's like, oh, you need a device that like they can figure out that they're moving without using a computer. This is just kind of the way to do it. So
Yeah, fair enough. Makes sense. I could see even without a story group coming to that conclusion just based on human history.
yeah, it's one of those. It's the device that they use to escape that planet
The
that they
asteroid field.
Yeah, the asteroid field. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's got a screen on it and stuff. So it's not like they're looking through a telescope or anything, but it's technically it's like old. It's the equivalent.
It's
the
like
old
an analog
Yeah,
computer.
it's like the Star Wars version of analog version of hyperspace computers and stuff like that. Here is something really weird that stuck out to me. Starlight only had manual opening overrides on the exterior of the station. So when the power goes out, it's really stupid. So when the power goes out and they lose the ray shielding to the hangars, these big doors get sealed, and it's magnetically sealed hangar bay. They can't blast their way out unless they basically set off a thermal detonator or a bomb or whatever, because it's magnetically sealed. Blaster fire, as we heard in that little clip with Geode, just bounces around the room. And the only hand crank to open these doors is on the outside of the door. And I was thinking to myself, like, is this normal? Like in a submarine, for example. Like, is that normal to like just be trapped inside and to only have the crank on the outside? Because I'm pretty sure they have one on both sides of the door.
Sides. This is a submarine.
Yeah,
the top hatch.
yeah. So I thought there was a bit of a weird plot hole that they just kind of. They needed a reason for them to be trapped in the hangar, and the only way they could do that was that they only put door handles on the outside. I was like, that's a little.
Did they say specifically that, or do they say that the ones on the inside have been tampered with by the Nihil?
No. So
Because that would have been a better explanation.
it's the beginning of chapter 19.
Okay.
And it starts. It says Starlight only has manual opening controls on the exterior of the station. Elzar Mann noted. He studied the schematics on display in Stellan's office. This situation is too unstable to send anyone out in a vac suit yet. Maybe we can hook up independent power cells to the doors. And then it kind of goes on from there. But it basically insinuates there are no indoor manual overrides for this door. For any of them. And I was like, that is just a really bad way to just kind of subvert that as a possible way out.
Maybe it was made by
You know?
the same engineers that made an exhaust port to go right to the core of the Death Star.
Yeah. Then again, I guess again, like 9/11, right? Like I think like, or Titanic, right? A great example is Titanic. Natural, like a disaster that happens, and it could have been avoided if people weren't being stupid, or if there was enough lifeboats aboard.
Lifeboats.
Yeah, and like like there's like more than one kind of thing that all kind of play into when chaos happens.
But the reason why in Titanic there wasn't enough lifeboats.
Lifeboats is the biggest reason why a lot of people died, right?
It is, but they considered the ship to be unsinkable the way it was built.
Exactly.
So
People
it was
were being stupid.
arrogance. It was arrogance.
Yeah, arrogance.
So
yeah.
you think that's what it was here as well?
Yeah, I think it was arrogance. I think it was
Because-
like the people who designed this big space station clearly just didn't think these will ever be necessary. And yet somehow the station's been built without a single like turret aboard. At least to me, it doesn't sound like it's got any offensive capability at all. So it wasn't made to be a Republic version of a Death Star. Like if we're talking about, this is
No.
a space station that's got like probably next to no defense capability. And it's literally like an outreach center, but it's
that's
huge.
exactly what it was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's just a giant building in space. Like that's basically what it is. And I was like, wow, don't put door handles on the inside. Come on, guys. All right, so here's another.
did we want to? I had a clip for something related to that,
Oh yeah,
so I think it's a good time to play it.
sure.
So
Yeah, go
we can
for it.
get into this a little bit. So what happens was they finally managed to turn off the magnetic ceiling inside the
Yeah.
hangar. They still can't get the doors open, so they decide they're gonna blow it open. And Leox Jossie volunteers to do it so that all the ships will then be able to fly out. This is once they're in atmosphere,
Right.
so they won't be sucked out into vacuum. And what I was, we'll get into it. Let me play the clip, and then we can kind of talk about what happens, because I was completely taken aback that they did this, and then we can get into my complaint afterwards.
You through, nonetheless. Affy's face lit up as she saw Leox begin working his way toward the opening. Apparently he was coming in that way, not through the hole on the side. And then the wind caught him, yanked him backward, away from the station. For one moment, it seemed as though Leox hung in the sky, before the gales tore him away, flinging him down toward the ground. And death. Affy screamed, "No! No, 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 please! No, please, no!" The words kept babbling out of her, like if she said them enough, somehow what had just happened wouldn't have happened. But Leox was gone. Geode managed to maintain his composure, locking in coordinates that would take them safely to the ground.
Yeah. So even though they blow up the thing so that in atmosphere, so that it avoids the suction of space, he still gets sucked out
By
because
winds.
they're by wind. Yeah. And I was like, dude, like again, like why?
Well, then he tries to like get in through the hole, so he just tries to walk through it instead of like the original way he went around, and they just get sucked out.
Yeah, he gets sucked out. It's like blowing a hole in like an airplane, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's like a lot of wind.
There's
and
still a
stuff.
lot. Yeah, it's still gonna
Yeah.
maybe get near it.
Yeah. But then it turns out he does survive though.
Yeah,
as we
that's
learn
my complaint, because when I first listened to this, I thought it was another
main character
that
death,
died.
right? Yeah.
And I listened to it a few times because I was like, no way, they actually killed him off? Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy, because he was just like a really prominent character. And then later, unfortunately, finally comes back, and that really ruined it for me. I thought that
Yeah.
actually would have been a really good story point if they killed him off.
Right. Yeah.
Instead, we find out, because I guess Leox he's kind of like what would be a good word for someone who just like really old technology?
I don't know, like a hobbyist of old tech.
Maybe.
Like
Yeah.
he's like an old school, he's like a old school kind of
Just
guy.
he really likes antiques.
Yeah, he
I don't
likes
know.
yeah.
Antiquologists.
Yeah, like yeah.
And so he gets sucked out, and he gets saved because he happens to have one of these things that nobody's ever heard of before called a parachute, because it's ancient technology. So I was very disappointed by this. I wish they just killed him off, because that would have been a way better story point to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I think the reason why no one has a parachute is because the seats that tend to jettison out of a spaceship, if they have them, are capable of self-landing, like an escape pod.
They also
right?
have anti-gravity belts and a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and as we've seen in Clone Wars, like there's some
Jetpacks.
methods of there's like that big like bouncy bubble that inflates around the seats in the cockpit or whatever. There's like some like giant like balloon ball that kind of goes off, and then they kind of bounce in their chairs or whatever. It's something like that. It was
that's similar. They have like one of the Land Rovers landing on Mars.
right. Yeah.
And they also have like boots with jetpacks.
Yeah, it's like jetpack technology is a thing. Like, why would anyone carry a parachute? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But he does.
Apparently. Just for the sole purpose of ruining story points.
There was a great quote which I found in the book, and I really liked this. This is what hope is. It isn't pretending that nothing will go wrong if we only try hard enough. It's looking squarely at all the obstacles in the way, knowing the limits of our own power and the possibility of failure, and moving ahead anyway. That is how we must proceed with hope. And I guess, like, you know, as it kind of brings me back to something that Dave said, like shared in the past, is like what George said to him is like, make these stories hopeful. You know, there's always got to be, can't be like, you know, super depressing or like whatever. It's like, make these stories are for kids. Like they got to be hopeful.
Then they made Andor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the hope though is like, it's still what drives those characters, right? The hope that life can be better. And so like, I thought it was kind of nice that, this book still kind of got into that, you know, even though as tragic as it is, and as many people are dying around the story, like these main characters, like they still have hope that they can save as many lives as possible before the station crashes. Mm-hmm. So they're constantly trying to find a way to, you know, how can we utilize the escape pods, even though they don't work as conventional? Like, how can we jerry rig something up that'll get these things to work? How can we like blast a hole that these ships can escape? You know, like they're always trying to find a way to do it. And it's not really until a certain point in the story that actually starts to play out, because at first they don't really know what's going on for like a really good chunk of the book.
A large chunk, yeah.
Yeah, a large chunk of the book, they're all like, what? So yeah, I mean, I think, and this goes back to my initial thoughts in the book a little bit, but I think there was a little bit of fluff in the book that could have been knocked out and slimmed the story a bit down.
Sure.
Only because it was so many characters just endlessly going like, what? You know, like constantly.
Yeah,
like,
it was, you're following like 4 or 5 storylines of people all not knowing what was happening.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, we get it. Like, no one knows what's going on, right? But they just had to put that in there. So I was like, you know what?
I think it's because at the end, all the storylines kind of start to crisscross.
It's true.
And they all bring different elements together.
Yeah, it kind of pays off in the end, but I think at some point, like there could have been some editing happening where it's like, okay, you know, let's move things along here. Like there was like little sections of chapters where we had someone kind of just their thoughts to themselves, and they're standing like in an elevator or something like that, or like nothing really major is happening, and it's like that I just consider that a little like
you consider that I have a contract to do 265 pages.
Yes, 100%. 100%. It's like, oh, I gotta make a certain amount of pages for this book. Let's just throw this in, right? And that's I think where the young adult novels really pay off, because like sometimes like they're shorter, but like it's kind of to the point, but they're not written to be like an amateur reader level. So like I agree with you. Like the young adult novels stand out to me as like good books a lot of the time, just because they're like shorter to read, to the point. It's good story content. It's not written for an amateur reader. It's you know, and it's still got some maturity to it as well. So there was a little section here. Elzar felt a ragged jab of worry for his mentor. And this was something that kind of got me. I don't know if it's just because these creatures aboard the ship that we talked about or what, but how come no one senses the deaths of all these Jedi that are kind of dying on board the space station? Because there's like a number of them that all kind of bite the dust, literally. And
they're like sucked up by this creature, the force creature thing?
Yeah, that turns them to ash or whatever. Like whatever it's doing that does that. I'm assuming it's making some sort of physical contact, which is not really.
Seems that way, because it seems like you're with characters that are with other characters, and when they leave and they come back, then suddenly they're turned to dust.
Yeah. So and like the moments in which the story describes their thoughts while they're dying, it makes it seem to me that this creature kind of approaches them, sneaks up of some kind, and then they can't see it coming because it disrupts their field of view in the Force, and then
like a tiger or a cougar, or
yeah,
some sort of
and then
creature.
it must make some sort of contact of some kind. I assume either a scratch or a bite or a prick or a stab or whatever with something, that basically makes that event happen that they turn to ash. Because for me, it's difficult to assume that anyone turns to ash just based on like fear alone, right? Like that was kind of
like
strange.
like some sort of like sucking of Force energy out of them.
Yeah, I don't really know, right? Like I guess is it killing the midichlorians in their bodies that they just kind of die, or but like why ash, right? Like why ash?
I think it'd be like the Ghostbusters ghost capture machine.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I just want to throw that out there. Like how come no one's sensing the deaths or like the lack of presence that they're no longer around, right? Because like even though they might not be able to sense the killing of this person, Obi-Wan still has that feeling that when all these people get blown up on Alderaan, it's not like he's thinking of all these people. Like these are people that are close to other people on the station, like floors away. You know, like how come no one senses the absence of this person in the Force anymore?
Lost in the chaos, maybe.
Yeah, I guess it's just that weird stuff that's like even in the Clone Wars, like when the Jedi are so blinded by the dark side and they can't like quite use the Force the way that they used to like see things. They don't know that Palpatine is Sidious, and it's like, okay, the Force is blinding, the dark side's blinding them. I get it. They can still sense like when someone dies a million miles away in space on another planet, right?
See with Yoda.
Yeah, like Yoda knows what's happening when Order 66 goes down, as dark kind of event that is, you know, and like the dark side's blinded them to certain things. He can still feel that, and it just makes me wonder, like, during the Light of the Jedi, like during the great disaster that happened in that book, they still sensed the feeling that people would be, you know, dying kind of here and there and like whatever. And I had a hard time kind of accepting that multiple Jedi kind of just die in this book and no one knows about it until they find the remains. And that to me was like one of the weirdest parts of this creature that kind of goes around killing all these Jedi. Is like how come no one senses this stuff?
This sounds like something we should tweet at Claudia Gray asking.
It's a question for Pablo.
We'll do that too.
Yeah. So there was something else about these creatures. One of the characters explains that in their head, they keep hearing a select set of words, and it's Shri Karai Karai. That's like it kind of reminded me of some sort of level of Sanskrit, kind of like Duel of Fates, like what we hear in that song. And I highlighted one of the words. I don't know what the rest of it says, but Shri is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as an Indian word to describe a god or a sacred book. And so I don't really know. Like this must play into kind of like what this creature is, like ancient wise. It's described as an ancient character of some kind. But I was like, oh, I kind of like the idea that this is like a really like, the one thing I like about it is that they're really tapping into that kind of ancient old Republic, old Sithy kind of like weird stuff, right? And that was like what I liked about it.
Sith created creatures, perhaps?
I don't know. You know, and like we know that the Drengir were unleashed originally by the Sith by mistake, and then they put them back until the Jedi accidentally removed their Force, like sorcery statues or whatever, and released the Drengir again. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's possible they could be kind of based on that. But I was like, oh, okay, well, that's the only thing we've got as a little kind of mental note as to what these things do before they kill someone. Like they end up hearing these voices in their head. And it must be a way of how these creatures communicate in the Force, I guess, like because they don't talk. So here's something interesting. Droid pilots and crew are usually only used by criminals and smugglers. The very lowest of the low use them. This is Marchion Ro's kind of evil plan, is like his ship is completely, by the end of this book, driven and piloted by droids. And
part of this, the reasoning for that though is he's kind of like Hitler, and the fact that by the end he just didn't trust anybody.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why he wanted all the droids.
Yeah.
So that he'd have like complete control of what they were doing. My first thoughts with that was it's probably easier to just reprogram a droid.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. What I thought was interesting though is that like it's perceived as kind of a low thing to do, and it's like I just look at like Dooku and Grievous. People have like I guess like Dooku especially, like he's got like a reputation to uphold. Like you're leading the army of droids. Like like I just thought like kind of takes away a little bit from where things eventually go. But I guess the advancement of technology would kind of go there anyways. So. Maybe that's just a thing.
Well, is it this novel series? No, it was a previous one. In the second book of this series, there's a group of pirates that are all droids.
Right.
So, yeah, they were kind of kooky and incompetent, so maybe that plays into it.
Yeah, maybe. I got two more things, and then we can wrap it up here. Bell, one of the Jedi characters, he makes a bomb. And I just thought to myself, I would love to see, like, because it's kind of weird and interesting that a Jedi can make a bomb. Anakin's got all these, like, tech skills, and, like, I would love to see a story in which they have Anakin make a bomb. Like, that would be really cool, because it would make a lot of sense, right? Like, he's good with that kind of stuff. I would love to see him, like, disarm a bomb, and not with the lightsaber, but, like, with the mechanical skill that he has in a book, or in, like, I don't know, like a Clone Wars episode or look whatever. Like it would be interesting to see that. That's kind of just what I thought. I was like, oh, Jedi make bombs. Like that's kind of cool.
Was there a reasoning behind it? Like I'm sure it was
not really
a class in the Jedi Order.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing, right? Like he's only got all these abilities from having grown up on Tatooine because they don't teach that stuff for the Jedi
with
Temple.
Anakin. But what about with Bell?
I don't really know. I don't really know why Bell knows how to make a bomb. But I just thought to myself as I was reading it, like, okay, well, everyone's got a hobby.
Nothing like making explosives.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, we all need a hobby.
Man, talking about getting on a list.
Right, yeah, but I thought it was kind of interesting. It was a little interesting story quip, I guess, that was like, oh, this is interesting. I wish I got to see Anakin do this.
Sure.
That's all I thought.
You just raised the question to me that it seems very strange.
Yeah, it is also strange. It is also strange. The last thing I have here is Coley Lynn. He's a character who's he's a pilot. He's on board the station when it's going down. He's the one that's freaking out. He was willing to kill people to try and survive. And what I put down as a note under that was there's always one. Any crisis movie that you ever watch, a story in which people are kind of in peril at all dying and at the same time they're all in a big crisis, right? There's always one person that's willing to like do whatever they can to like try and survive, even if it means like everyone else kind of dies. Right.
Super selfish people.
Yeah. And they're
determined to live.
Exactly. And I like the fact that this was no different. Like we're looking at a huge crisis going on. There is going to be someone like that on board who naturally wants to just kind of survive at the expense of others. And it made sense to have a character like that. So it kind of covered that territory, within the story, which is good. Do you have any last minute things you want to bring up?
I had one last clip for us to listen to,
cool.
And it's because I thought it was just really ridiculous. So it is the scene where Marchion's having his final banquet after the success of destroying the station.
All right.
And he's talking about all the delightful foods that he has here at his banquet, and they're playing the most ridiculous music in the background. So I thought we could listen to that.
Yeah, sure.
And whose whereabouts were unknown regardless. Roe understood his people needed to literally taste the victory over the Jedi. And what better way to mark this win forever with his name, his will, his intent. Thousands upon thousands of Nile had gathered together on the chosen planet's surface before Thea Fair signaled the droids that it was time to begin distributing the massive stores of food and intoxicants laid aside in preparation for this day. Wines and ales flowed like fountains. Tip-yip and gort were brought out steaming on long platters. It was opulent. It was decadent. It was the greatest victory celebration the Nile had ever known. only one gathering would be even grander. The one Marquion Rowe intended to hold as soon as the Jedi had been crushed forever.
That's no John Williams.
No, it's not. I just thought it was so funny though because he's talking about all these like foods at his banquet for celebration there.
Yeah.
And then the music's just like it's almost like he's about to get into like this massive fight. Like you're playing like a video game and you're fighting like the final boss.
Yeah.
And he's talking about like tomatoes and turkeys.
Yeah. It's that is kind of funny.
It was just a really strange editing choice.
Yeah, it is.
That was worth, taking a listen to.
It is. You almost expect it to be playing some sort of like Darth Plagueis-y, like opera theater kind of music, like the track that they always use from Revenge of the Sith when Sidious is talking to Anakin.
Sure. Yeah,
they
like
always use that clip. Yeah. I can't do it.
Yeah.
My voice is all worn out now.
Yeah, kind of like monk noises.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. But no, that's cool. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so let's give this book some Pablo points or poodoos, and then I got a question to ask you. So I think I'll give this like a one Pablo point. It was good. I liked it. Wasn't fabulous. Wasn't great. Definitely wrapped things up nicely, but it wasn't terrible.
That's fair. I would say it was for me, again, as I just said at the beginning of this podcast, the second novel was just so hard to get through.
Yeah.
That it elevated this one. And so, and all the characters dying really surprised me.
That was cool too.
That kept me really involved. I don't know if I should be celebrating the fact that they're just killing off all the main characters, and that's what makes it good. It feels a little, maybe I don't have the best perspective on this series. But I would say I was quite happy with it. And I'd probably go as far as saying maybe like 2 1/3. I definitely wouldn't go as far as a 3. 2.5 feels like too much.
So just maybe north of 2.
Maybe 2, yeah.
Well, 2 is still quite high.
Let's go with 2 then.
2 Pablo points. All right. So in case anyone doesn't know, we've explained this a lot of times, but our Pablo points are our Pablo Poodoo system. It's a scale of 7. Yeah, I should have opened with this. Scale of 7. 3 Pablo Poodoos is the worst. Then there's 2, then 1 Pablo Poodoo, and then there's in the middle 50% of Bendu, and then we got the Pablo points range in the positive. So that's 1 Pablo point, 2 Pablo point, or 3 Pablo point. 3 being like the absolute best, 100% A+. So I'd say 1 Pablo point's not it's north of a 50% pass. It's good, right? It's just a solid good, not a great, not a fantastic. It's just a good. You're giving it 2, so that's even higher.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely go as far as like getting close to that 3 range. Maybe 2.5 would be too much too. Maybe I'm thinking like 2 to like just south of that maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at a percentage in my head.
Yeah.
Give it. I don't know if we're allowed to say percentage. So.
I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's
like I as far as
like 1.75 Pablo points.
70 to 75%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Right, sweet. Well, that is Jedi: The Fallen Star in a nutshell. So I mean, we can wrap it up here and segue into very important, very awesome little video here. Let's take a listen here.
Blast into the past with the Star Wars and Orbitkey Retro Collection.
The Death Star. The Millennium Falcon.
Inspired by iconic ships in a galaxy far, far away.
The TIE Fighter. And the X-Wing.
Available now. Inspired by iconic ships from the decade where it all began.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Star Wars Escape Pod. Don't forget to leave a review that would make even Master Yoda proud.
All right, so Jedi Survivor has come out. Actually, well, real quick. Let's talk about this Orbitkey. Sorry,
I'm just gonna play the ad and then glance over it.
My brain is ahead of my my mouth. All right, so Orbitkey. They just released this new retro collection. We talked about Orbitkey last year, Kirk of course works at Orbitkey. He's been a good friend of ours and coming on the podcast all the time. And these new samples that he sent out are absolutely fabulous. So if you're looking for a new gift, to give, Father's Day gift, whatever, who doesn't know somebody with like a whole massive jamble of keys on a key ring? Do them the favor. You can get one of these, and we have one, and they're great.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have additional add-ons. You get like a multi-tool, which is very handy. So I can always open my beer wherever I am if you're of legal drinking age. As well as there's a cutty bit and a little measuring thing. But for me, it's all about opening that beer.
Yeah. It's got a gold award from 2018. The company, it's climate neutral certified. And no key, jingle, or scratches in your pocket. And they all kind of stack in this nice little containment sleeve. And each Orbitkey holds 7 keys, 2 to 7 keys. It's got a flexible securing locking mechanism. Carry your car. It's got an included D-ring on it, so you can carry your car fob with up to 7 keys. And you can get the extension post as well, which I believe adds another 4. So every single Orbitkey, they're based on either a character or a ship. This new retro series is based on ships. They come in this nice little sleeve box. Like, here, let's listen to this. Oh my goodness. Satisfying. Oh yeah. Okay. And then, gonna open this up.
Did you play with sounds?
Oh man.
Oh man.
Satisfying. I gotta listen to this. Let me take this out. All right. Listen to that. Got a nice little X-Wing Starfighter card here with a readout. What is the X-Wing? I'll read off what the X-Wing says. So spoilers if anyone wants to be surprised. No design better depicts the rebellious spirit demonstrated by X-Wing pilots than this special edition key organizer. With the Rebellion orange leather band inspired by the Rebel pilot uniforms and the silver hardware similar to the mechanical details of the ship itself, this key organizer is built for anyone standing up for what they believe in across their own galaxy. Remember the excitement when you first witnessed Star Wars? These retro-styled key organizers infused with silhouettes of iconic Star Wars starships, celebrate our fondness for a galaxy far, far away. Whether you bring a rebellious spirit to defend your galaxy or prefer the order and command of an empire, these key organizers will unlock your destiny throughout the galaxy. Honor the Force. So it's a collectible card that you're intended to keep, along with a nice little booklet of how to install your keys. It has a little list of compatible attachments that kind of come from the website as well, and they're great. I mean, listen to this. Listen to this leather. Oh man. Okay, yeah.
So we recorded all of these sounds.
I know, right? And then on the backside, it says, from the Skywalker saga to the Mandalorian and beyond, the Star Wars galaxy is filled with these endless stories and timeless characters inspired by the iconic ships and rousing adventures. These special edition key organizers are designed in Orbitkey's elegant and understated design language, the perfect gear to help you on your journey to unlock your destiny throughout the galaxy. I'm going to put that back in the box there. And I think, stay tuned. May the 4th, there you go. May 4th is a great episode to tune in. We're going to do something very, very shortly for May 4th, and we'll probably set up a giveaway for one of these as well, which is going to be pretty exciting. We did a giveaway a couple months ago, and went pretty well. So I think we'll do another one of these giveaways and see how well it goes. So stay tuned to the podcast and keep tuning in and check those links in the description. We'll definitely put a link to this video
Yeah, well,
which our
Kirk
friend
act-
Kirk
yeah.
made that video.
Yeah, so I was gonna say Kirk actually directed the trailer for these. So
Yeah.
you know, maybe you already have a key organizer. Maybe it's just not the right time to purchase one. It's not really up to it. Maybe this is something you're gonna do down the road. At least check out this trailer because it was a really good job.
Oh, yeah,
I'm really
yeah.
impressed with Kirk's work on it.
Yeah.
Like it's very retro. It's made to feel like it was right out of the 1970s.
Yep.
It's a 4:3 ratio. It is a really impressive ad.
Oh yeah, top of the line. Top
And
of
I
the
don't
line
mean to
stuff.
say that just because we're not like officially affiliated or anything. I actually just think it's a good video.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, we appreciate good cinematography. So you know, it's awesome. And you know, that being said, Orbitkey does not sponsor our podcast or anything, but they do us the favor of sending us these free samples out. So you know, we didn't pay for these, but we do love them a lot, and you know, it's worth kind of talking about them. We were told by Kirk we don't need to talk about them, but we choose to do it anyways.
That's true.
because we like them. You know what I like most about mine is like I can flip out whatever key I want and kind of just put it in the door and twist and turn, and it acts like a extended handle.
Like a handle, yeah.
To the key.
I noticed that with mine as well.
Yeah, and then you also don't get the jabbing of like all the other keys in your palm, nor do you get them scratching up your door because like that's
true.
another issue that some people have. So, you know, there's more than one reason to have these Orbitkeys, and you know, we've passed a few to the podcast crew out, you know, thanks to Kirk and Orbitkey. They've given us a few in the past, and everyone just loves them. Like, you know, Reed absolutely loves these. He's about to order another one because
He's got too many keys.
yeah, and you know, he got his just through the samples that we got from Orbitkey,
Does
but he
Reed-
was willing to buy one as well just because he's got so many keys. He's got a whole nother set of keys he's got, and he wants a
Does
Orbitkey
Reed
to put
know
on.
that there's a pole extension?
He does, and he's got it on there.
Pole extender.
he's got that many
TM.
keys. He's got that many keys. So you know, it's definitely worth checking these out, and you know, stay tuned for May 4th. I don't know, maybe there's going to be some sort of May 4th sale. As
We don't know if that's a thing, so don't quote us on that.
Yeah, right. We don't know if that's exactly. That's not an actual like piece of news or anything like that. But I'm just speculating. May 4th is just a day for a lot of Star Wars sales, so just keep an eye out. Follow Orbitkey on Twitter and Instagram, and you know, you might see something. Again, that's me 0% confident about that, but
Doesn't
I know
happen.
for sure.
Don't get mad at us.
I know for sure though that we will put together a giveaway, and if anything, you have a shot at getting one for free from us, from Orbitkey.
And whoever the lucky winner is will get to have a choice, if they want it at all, to have their personal Orbitkey hand signed by either Josh or Blake.
If anything, if you just want it as is, we'll just pass you one of our business cards in the box with a little thank you for being such a loyal listener. Which hopefully the winner of the podcast giveaway actually does listen to the podcast, because I'm pretty sure when you run a giveaway, you just get a lot of people entering that don't listen to the podcast. But you know, the idea again, we don't make any money off this podcast, so we do love to see it succeed. So just make sure, you know, by doing us any favor at all, put down a few stars in iTunes or Spotify, whatever you're listening on. Just make sure you got the 5 stars hit off, along with a nice little kind few words. If you're listening in Podbean, you know, same deal. You know, leave a comment or a review or whatever. And you know, we do love to see that kind of stuff. We share it around our group chat anytime anyone leaves a comment or a review, and it's always nice and encouraging to see, and you know, keeps us kind of motivated coming back each week. So, would love to hear from you guys. But that's all we got for Orbitkey, the retro collection. Go check it out. Links in the description. And let's segue into Jedi Survivor.
It's been a long 5 years. They've tried to resist. Fear and mistrust rule the galaxy.
Cal. Look into the fire. It will warm you, keep you company. But left unchecked, it will consume everything until there is only ash.
How could you let the galaxy fall to this unworthy machine of an empire?
Hope may feel beyond our grasp. But I think we finally found somewhere the Empire can't reach us.
Imagine. No more looking over your shoulder.
A place that's worth fighting for, no matter the cost.
All right, yeah. So that's the trailer for Jedi Survivor. Came out April 28th, 2023, and naturally, I mean, this is a spoiler-free review, so no spoiler warning for this at all. This is just initial launch news and thoughts on the game, as well as just a few initial reviews, just to kind of get that Star Wars news out there, and then we're going to wrap it up for today. But in general, Star Wars Jedi Survivor received generally favorable reviews from professional critics. Metacritic PC score 78 out of 100, PS5 86 out of 100, and Xbox Series X and S 87 out of 100. Score from IGN came in at 9 out of 10, PC Gamer at 80 out of 100, and my personal review of the game is actually 3 Pablo points.
Oh, I almost said 3 out of 10.
Yeah. But that's
right.
the game is fantastic. Just really quick, initial things is the story takes place 5 years after the first game. So we're talking 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, the exact same year as Obi-Wan Kenobi takes place, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, okay. This is speculatory because I have not made it through the game far enough to confirm this. So again, no spoiler warning. But I thought it would be a good opportunity, this game actually cross over with that show somehow in some minor way. And I don't know if we'll see that or not, but it's possible.
We'll end up on a Coruscant-ish planet, and you'll see a robed man chasing after a girl through a crowd.
Right. I don't know. What I like about this game so much is it advances the lightsaber combat by a lot. And you don't restart from ground zero again.
Yeah, that's the coolest part.
Yeah, all the skills that you learned as Cal Kestis in the first game pass over to this next game, and then you build on top of that. So you don't start as like a weakling in the second game.
Because I hate when games do that. It's like, and I feel like so many story games, that's what happened. They just have you start fresh, and then there's new things to learn, but you still have to relearn everything from zero. It's like, why is my character who I was just playing suddenly have amnesia?
Right.
And if there's 3 games, like 3 times in a row, he just loses all of his gear and like all of his training and knowledge. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of customization added to this game. The level design is based on next-gen consoles, so of course it's going to be way bigger and way more complex looking and much more detailed. This is available on PlayStation 5, Windows, Xbox Series X and S, and is a single-player action-adventure game. And I would say, pacing-wise, story's amazing. So
how far in are you at this point?
I am over 14% of the way through the game.
Okay.
So like I've got enough gameplay in that I kind of get the idea.
So
and it's definitely, it's got more open worldy aspects about it than it is kind of more on the rails, which the first game, even though you could traverse a map and go back in areas and stuff, you can again in this area, but there's more than one thing to do now. It's
not as linear of a map.
Yes. Yeah, it's not as like once you've kind of cleared it out, like, you know, done certain puzzles and access certain areas, like, you know, at least now you might have a reason to go back to some of these areas, and there's side quests in this. In this one, there's side quests, whereas the first one there wasn't. So it kind of combines like the first game with maybe more of like a witchery vibe.
RPG.
Yeah, classic RPG. Yeah, yeah, exactly. But yeah,
that's interesting because for this I had heard. Oh, lost my train of thought.
There was one review that came in that pitted it as the best Star Wars game in 20 years since KOTOR.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know the bar already was super high because the first game was so good.
Yeah.
So for them to try to beat that was already a really high standard. Like how
Yeah.
many sequels are just kind of...
Absolutely.
They
yeah.
try to push the envelope and then they can't deliver.
And, we will do a full spoiler story review down the road. And Dan has expressed interest in coming back to chat about that. I know Nick is also keen to come on, as well as Kirk. So we'll have a bit of a party going and, do like a full kind of explanation of what happened in the story, and just what we thought of the game as a full detailed kind of post looking back kind of way. We'll probably wait about 2 months to do that because, of course, EA and Cameron Monaghan, the guy who plays Cal Kestis, has said, do not spoil this game for people. Please, do not spoil this game. Don't talk about it too early. I know people have already binged all the way through it, and there's stuff online about it. So just be careful what you Google if you want to be surprised. Just best suggestion is pick it up right now, start playing it. If you haven't played the first one, do that. Do that first maybe. It's also worth mentioning there's a novel that takes place between the events of these two games, and it's called Battle Scars. And I think it's a good book for us to kind of hit next.
I started it. I'm 3 minutes in.
There you go. That'll be our next book review. But you got something to read out, which is a notice. This is the one downside.
Well, I wanted to talk a bit about the game before we get into that.
Oh, sure.
So I had heard, this doesn't really affect the story of what's going to happen, so I want to ask you about it. So I had heard that as opposed to the first game, they're really like pulling back on fighting the Empire, and this is more, you're fighting more like independent.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's definitely.
I don't know the name.
Yeah, and like I'm trying to kind of do this in a way that it's spoiler free, but as we've seen, I'll talk about stuff that's shown up in the trailers just to kind of.
Yeah, stick to that. It's fine.
I'll stick to the trailer content. There is High Republic involvement in this game, which is ironic and this is part of the reason why we're talking about this after our High Republic book review, because there is a character in the game that pops up that is completely non-Imperial. He's actually a Jedi from the High Republic era. That's kind of frozen. I guess he's frozen in time in a bacta tank or something. I don't know. Like again, this is completely speculatory. But from the trailer, he's wearing High Republic robes.
Okay.
And he seems to be a Force-using Jedi.
That's really strange because I know one of the villains we see in the trailer. This is, again, speculation. He looks like he is from, like the Tor.
Yeah.
Night, like the old Republic MMO.
Yeah. So you're talking about the pale guy, right?
Yeah.
So he's High Republic Jedi.
Oh, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, and the big dude in the armor.
That's what I was talking
from the
about.
trailer.
Sorry, was that
he's the same species as Dirge, the bounty hunter, and so he leads like a pirate kind of group on a planet somewhere. So you're right. Like there is a lot more, I guess, or less Imperial involvement like in this game. It does kick off with some Imperial involvement, but like. I'm not going to get into it now, but like it is the story is kind of not trying to repeat the first game,
right?
In that sense. I've also kind of come to a point of understanding of like that it does still have the same Tomb Raider-y vibe to the story. Like there's still a lot of
they're
very
leaning
cool,
more into that than the first game.
Yeah. And it's that being said, it's very much more kind of High Republic kind of looking back at that era.
Interesting, yeah.
So it's very cool. Anyone who is going to play this game might now find some fascination in reading the High Republic books just because it is so closely connected, right? But then on top of that, I mean, we've had very few we've had very few games and media that aren't books in the High Republic. Something I mentioned earlier. Tales from the Galaxy's Edge had the VR game that had like a few like a VR experience which takes place during the High Republic. So that was really cool. And I think other than that though, there's really not a whole lot. We're supposed to get that Eclipse game at some point.
Oh right.
And that's got a really cool trailer.
But didn't they say that's like in 10 years?
Yeah, they said it was like a ways away, and I'm like, okay, well, eventually.
I'll get
I
it for
guess.
my 40th birthday.
Yeah, it was like gonna be like 6 or 7 years before we get that game. So they spent all the dev into the trailer and none of the game. So, but yeah, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of games, or we don't have a whole lot of like, visual content other than comic books and the novels that really kind of describe what this era looks like. And I think it's very cool that a game like this takes the opportunity, with its kind of Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones elements, to explore that from a looking back perspective, right? Because Cal has these abilities that allow him to see things through the Force, and it, it's just a very good opportunity for them to use to kind of approach this era.
That's a good point.
Without making a dedicated game that takes place in it. So very, it's awesome, and that's the best spoiler-free way I can possibly put it. But
so far it's looking good. You
so
pre-rated
far,
it. We'll see.
I've pre-rated it. I will let you know if the rating changes, but at the moment I'm just giving it a 3 Pablo points. It's sitting above the 86% for an A. So for me it's a 3 Pablo points. Yeah.
Okay, that's exciting.
Initial review. Again, spoiler-free initial review. We'll do a full review down the road in a month or two.
And we'll see just how we manage to transition from 3 Pablo points to 3 Pablo poodoos.
Yeah.
Full 360. We did have a warning that's worth putting out in regards to this game, though. So it appears that this game was originally created for console and then ported over to PC.
Yeah.
As there's been a lot of reports of...
It was built on the PlayStation 5 platform, optimized for PS5.
There we go.
And not really further optimized for anything else that much.
Yeah, so it seems that the PC port may not have been as smooth as they had hoped.
It's not as stable, yeah.
So a lot of people are having pretty massive issues to the point where the game is unplayable.
And this is completely un-hardware related. Like limitation-wise, un-hardware related. It's still a hardware thing for like CPUs with that are built on the Windows 11 platform, but they're running Windows 10. And then it's causing some issues. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. Like if you have like a 4090 graphics card, people are still having problems because it's not actually the limitation of that graphics card, rather than like the actual port of the game is just really buggy.
Yeah, and as you're saying, it seems to be something to do with Windows 10, Windows 11.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. Yeah.
So EA actually put out a kind of like a warning, whatever, on their Twitter. So feel free to look that up. I'm gonna read it up here. Okay, so we are aware that Star Wars Jedi Survivor isn't performing to our standards for a percentage of PC players, in particular those with high-end machines or certain specific configurations. For example, players using cutting-edge multi-threaded chipsets designed for Windows 11 were encountering problems on Windows 10, or a high-end GPU coupled with lower-performing CPUs also saw unexpected frame loss. Rest assured, we are working to address these cases quickly. While there is no single comprehensive solution for PC performance, the team has been working on fixes and believe will improve performance across the spectrum of configurations. We are committed to fixing these issues as soon as possible, but each patch requires significant testing to ensure we don't introduce new problems. Thanks for understanding and apologies to any of our players experiencing these issues. We will continue to monitor performance across all platforms and share update timing as soon as it is available. The Star Wars Jedi team.
So thankfully I've been okay. Maybe I just lucked out.
You're on PC.
I'm on PC. I'm playing with a very new piece of hardware. It's an upgraded computer. It's a brand new fresh build, running a 4080 graphics card with a 13th gen Intel i7, running on Windows 11 platform. So like the compatibility is as good as it can possibly get on my end, and it's been okay. Like there's still been some frame drop areas here and there, but it's rare.
Because that seems to be the main issue. Some people are dropping down to like 6 frames a second.
The Xbox has a flat out like 12 to 14 frames per second drop across the board. Which is weird because the Xbox is it's a more powerful console. Yeah, and that's just that's not like that. If you take it down to the hardware, like that's just fact. But because the game was built for PlayStation, it's been optimized for that platform and then ported, right? So Xbox is suffering, PC suffering. Technically, PC version should blow it out of the water with the uncapped frame rate. But, again, people are having problems because of all these other issues.
See, that's the issue. They uncapped it in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Bryce is having issues. Like, he bought the game and right away, issues. AJ is having issues. So, it really depends on, like, what's your hardware configuration, what's your operating system at. The game was delayed originally to this date because of some polishing that they had to do. And I think, again, of course, there's a group of people that are always affected by these problems, but I'm glad that it hasn't affected the reviews of the game, because that can sometimes rip a game down to shreds. Like that happened with Arkham Knight when that came out, or Cyberpunk as well was a big one. Yeah, so it can affect the launch of the game, and I just hope that this doesn't destroy the game's reputation. So anyone who bought it, like, don't be discouraged. Like, they will patch it, they will update it, and
it's unfortunate that they don't have a rough ETA. It seems to be completely up in the air at this point.
Yeah, I imagine that they are in overtime, just kind of hammering out something.
They're planning on drinking beers and cheersing and all the success, and instead they're still working overtime.
Oh yeah,
slammed.
It's a video game life for you.
Yeah. A question for you then.
Yeah.
Would you say, let's say you wanted to play the game on PC, but you have a PlayStation, would you A, get the PC game and risk it, B, hold off until they fix it, or C, bite the bullet, buy the PlayStation version?
I would say if you have a PlayStation or a PC, get the PlayStation version if you don't have a gaming setup that's kind of made for like 4K uncapped frame rate gaming at this next generation level. Like, if you've got a medium tier gaming computer, get the PlayStation 5 version. You're not going to run into any problems on that one. Also, that game has been kind of built to utilize the DualSense controller, so you get that really cool force feedback in the triggers, and the reasons that make that controller kind of cool. This game is going to utilize that to the max. So because it's an action adventure, I play on PC, but I play with a controller anyway. So, like, I would say at this point in time, if you haven't bought a copy, but you're ready for it, you've played through the first one, maybe you've read the book as well. Who knows? You're like, just like, I'm gonna get this copy, but I want PC or PlayStation. Maybe just get the PlayStation. Unless you're running like a top tier gaming rig, that's the only option you have. Then of course get it if hopefully you're running good enough hardware to do it, and if not, just be patient. They'll come out with a fix in probably, a couple days or a week or whatever.
Or a month.
Yeah. It won't be long. But that's all we got for today. Not a crazy supersized episode, but we're hitting it on the longer run, so we're going to wrap it up here. But yeah, what do we got next? Real quick. I mean, Rebels talk.
Yeah, we're about to bite the bullet and get into some Rebels, and
yeah.
I guess we're going to have to look at whatever the release date is for Ahsoka and try to hammer it out by then.
Yeah, totally. So, you guys, we're going to be kicking off our Rebels Talk series. This was a series that originally we were going to do 2 years ago with Diego, who did Clone Wars Talk, and never got around to it. We did a first episode and then ended up not following up, so we removed it from our list and so on and so forth. So here we go again. We're going to kick things off with a first episode of Rebels Talk, just like we did with Clone Wars Talk, and keep going from there. We're super excited about it, so make sure you come back on the podcast for that, as well as our upcoming May 4th episode, which we will get out this week. Thank you again, Blake, for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
We'll see you all next time, and may the Force be with you.